So now that I have some other things out of the way, let's take a few minutes and let's see about tuning the Jeep with the new wideband O2 sensor on it. But we can get the idle and should be able to get the mid-range fairly adjusted just sitting here, I would think. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fire it up because it hasn't been running for a couple of days. So let's fire it up and then I'll let it warm up until the fans come on. For those of you that are new to the channel and maybe haven't seen this video before or haven't seen this vehicle before, this is an 80 Jeep CJ-7 with 4.2 straight 6, and I have a Holley Pro-Jection on it, the old manual Pro-Jection, the one with the adjuster box like that. And I'm just thinking, I've had it on for a long time and it's always worked good, so I think the wideband sensor is going to help me get it set even better. So let's get it started. And I'll let it warm up and we'll come back once it's warm and off high idle, and we will see if we can't get this set a little bit better. Okay, the fans just turned on and off, so it is up to temperature. And got a bit of a uneven idle. It's clean though, there's no smoke coming out. This is a Remand engine I put in probably 10-12 years ago. It's got probably 110,000 miles on it. And for those of you that are interested, it's a sunny 75-degree day here in Arizona. I've also got a dual row aluminum radiator, a Flexolite PWM fan controller, and the Ford Contour dual fans on it. So as you can see, we're running pretty lean. I would consider 14 and a half to 15 and a half to 1 pretty lean. So that's probably our loping idle. So I'm going to get the idle controller in my fingers, if I can do that while watching the camera at the same time. It's about in the middle of its range. So let's go. Whoops. Oh, the horn button just fell off. All right. Crisis averted. Let me see how I can reach that better. Not as flexible as I used to be. Yeah, that's way too lean. So let's go all the way rich. So smoothing out a lot. See how rich it'll go. That's full rich there. And I would call 10 or 11 to 1 a little bit on the rich side, but it sure is idling smoother. Up, now we're getting a bit of lope back into it. Let's try going back a bit. There's 12 to 1. That's very smooth there, around 12 to 1. All that lope is gone. 11.7 to 12.2. Let's try going up to about 12 and a half. There we go, right around 12 and a half. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of that unevenness back in. Let's try going to 13. Definitely getting that feeling of an uneven idle in. Yeah, let's go back to 12. It's definitely gone right around 11.8 to 12.1. Now mid-range is going to affect this too. So mid-range, let's see where mid-range is. Make sure it's about in the middle. There's all the way rich. There's all the way lean. So yeah, mid-range affects it a lot. So let's bring the Let's bring the RPM up. We're way rich there. Way rich. So I'm going to bring mid-range. Let's see where idle goes now. That's made idle go way lean. So I'm having a bit of a problem here getting this set the way I think it should. And that problem is that the idle and the mid-range seem to be doing the exact same thing. It's almost like it's two controls that do, well, I just said the exact same thing. And since I am too rich at mid-range and too lean at idle, it seems like either idle's going to be too lean or mid-range is going to be too rich, and there's nothing I can do about it since they both do the exact same thing. I hope I'm explaining that well. And I've tried a bunch of different things and kind of sort of remembering this is how it used to be anyway. And I don't know exactly where the problem is with that, or if that's even a problem, or if it's wiring or something going on inside the box or what. But that's the issue I'm having right now. On the interweb, and I found some instructions for the Holley Pro-Jection 1D. And this is what I found and printed out. And it seems correct, but I'll be honest with you, some of the names aren't right in the tuning. They call idle idle and excel, but it looks like they're calling mid-range main, and which probably is what it really is. And they're calling power high RPM or something like that. But I also found this. That's the original instructions, a little the worse for wear and tear, that came with it. Now I bought this used. I don't know if I've mentioned that, but I bought this used about 20, maybe 25 years ago from a guy who bought it for his Jeep, couldn't get it to work right, went back to the carburetor. So he took it all off, bundled it all up real nice, and sold it for me for some silly ass price, like $100. And I put it on, followed the instructions, and it worked right, right away. I didn't really have that much to do. I was surprised with how easy it was. I think there was probably more wrong with his Jeep than just the carburetor, but nonetheless, in this set of instructions, they have the correct names, and it's been a long time since I've spent much time looking at this. And one thing they mention is that when you adjust this, and this might be why they changed the name of mid-range in the later ones, what they want you to do, see if I can get to the pertinent pages, what they want you to do after you get through all the assembly instructions, first start positions. They want you to put everything in the middle. And then what they want you to do is run it up to 3,000 RPM and get mid-range set so the engine runs as fast as it will and with the highest vacuum, and then go back and adjust the others, and they give instructions for that in there. And then they say after doing all that, if the idle is still too rich or too lean, or you can't get the idle within the range that you want it with the idle adjustment, move the position of the throttle of the TPS, the throttle position sensor. And they suggest doing it with a voltmeter. I'm not going to fuck around with a voltmeter, and I may have done that originally 20 years ago, and I may have just done it by ear. I really cannot remember, but I have the air fuel gauge now, so I'm just going to use it with the air fuel gauge for that. So I'm going to check fuel pressure first. I really don't think the problem is fuel pressure, and then I'm going to go through the rest of those proceedings. Now, I don't have a tachometer in the vehicle, but I have one of those little handheld things. This is all just troubleshooting here. I have one of those little handheld ones, you put the magnetic strip on, like you see Project Farm, testing the speed of drills and things like that. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to do the fuel pressure check real quick. Like I say, I don't think that's an issue, but no point, leaving it there as a question mark. Okay, so I have a fuel pressure in the inlet here, and This is the inlet, obviously, and this is the return to fuel tank here. And if I were to crimp this completely off, they say I should have 30 psi for a low pressure pump and 45 for a high. This is a low pressure pump. I think it's supposedly like 15 to 18 psi, but without the return blocked off, I should have 15 psi here, and there is an adjustment inside. There's actually a fuel regulator built into that, and they say it's factory set. I've never checked it, I don't think, and I've certainly never messed with it, but I'm gonna check it now. So I'm gonna kind of set the camera down here. Hopefully it will stay in view of that, and I'm just gonna turn it on and we'll see where it goes. All right, here we go. I'm only seeing about 11 or 12 psi on there. So let me see if I can find that adjustment and I'll set that. Here we go. Oh, that doesn't want to turn. Oh, that really doesn't want to turn. Well, I kind of don't really want to fuck with that because I don't want to break it. Oh, that really doesn't want to budge. All right, I don't think I'm going to fuck with that. Okay, since that Allen adjustment in there does not want to budge, I am not going to mess with it because I don't want to break it, because parts for this thing are unobtainium at this point. That's another problem I'm going to have to deal with. I'm going to have to assume that that's enough fuel pressure because I've never had a fuel pressure problem with this. If that is a problem, or I think it is, I'm going to have to disassemble this and get in there and find out why that won't turn. I wonder if it just won't turn because it's under pressure. That seems unlikely, but let's shut it off and see if that makes a difference. Okay, it is turned off. Pressure has dropped to 0. Let's see if that will turn now. Oh God, no, that ain't moving, not at all. So I'm just going to ignore that. I think that is definitely the right thing to do. Okay, that is as fast as the idle adjustment will get us. What are we at? We are at 21, about 2200. I'm going to go with it there because there's no way I'm going to be able to sit inside and do that. So we want that mid-range to sound about as best and look about as best as I can. So I'm going to go a little leaner. Slowing down there. Slowing down there. I'm going to shoot for about 12.5 because that seems to run pretty good right around 12.5. So when I slowed the idle back down, I dropped it down to about 700, and or at least what this says is 700. And then when the fans came on, the engine almost died. So I turned it back up to about 800, 850, and around that range. 750 with the fans on. Okay, I can live with that. What's the AFR? AFR is at 15.5, 16, which is way too lean. So I found a different set of tuning instructions, and they're pretty interesting. Also note there is more than one Holley Pro-Jection 1D control box. So far I've found 3 that look completely different, and I guess they're just iterations of it over the years. I think that big long one I have is the earliest one. So anyway, this is the set of instructions I found. It's pretty interesting. Set the adjustment screws to the middle. Okay, I've done that. Now it says unscrew the idle screw on the TBI all the way out so that the blades close all the way. Screw it in 2.5 turns and set the voltage across the throttle position sensor to 0.63 volts. While the voltmeter is hooked up, open the throttle all the way. It should read about 5 volts at full open throttle. And also make sure as you open and close it smoothly, it moves up and down smoothly. And I've already replaced the TPS on this once many years ago. Start the motor, should be close enough to idle. If it won't stay idling or if it's idling too fast, adjust the idle screw to where you want it, 7 to 800 RPM. Now they say you'll have to, if you've changed the idle, you'll have to reset the TPS to 0.63 volts. They're saying fuel pressure could stay at 15, and I noticed it never changed from what it read. Also, that meter, that little cheapo Harbor Freight fuel pressure gauge I have, it might be a couple of pounds off. I have no way to check that. Tune the screws on the ECU. Now, he does mention that the TPS sets the total range of that the tuning screws will affect. TPS voltage setting moves this range up and down the RPM scale in one big block. I don't know how that would affect the fact that my idle and mid-range seem to be doing the exact same thing. Each individual screw controls the fueling throughout the 3 main areas of throttle usage. Doesn't seem to be the way on mine. Idle controls idle speed, mid-range controls cruising up through 2/3 throttle. Again, they both seem to do the exact same thing on mine. Power controls everything over 2/3 throttle. Best to start by adjusting the idle speed, and see, this is the exact opposite the way Holley says to do it. Adjust the idle speed and set the screw where you can get the highest idle speed, then lean it out a little. Next, while sitting still, rev the engine to 3,000 and then turn the mid-range screw till you get the highest idle engine speed while holding throttle at the exact same spot you started at. Is that the fuel pressure should stay at 15, we know that, but it says it's imperative there be no fuel pressure on the return line. It must read 0 at idle. Now that's something I've never checked. So maybe that is something worth checking. I've got a voltmeter here. We'll check the TPS. I was hoping I could just do this with the wideband O2 sensor, but apparently it's not going to be that easy. If I do all of this and the idle and the mid-range screws still seem to do the exact same thing, I think I'm going to have to pull the box out, pull the board out, and see if I've made any mistakes on the board. Let's check that return line pressure first. It's supposed to be 0, so I'm not gonna put hose clamps on anything. Just got the rubber hose pushed on. If it's more than 0, I guess I'll know about needing hose clamps on it. But it's still stone cold, so it's going to be up on high idle. So let's take a look. It's on 0 and there's no leak, so it is 0. All right, let me hook that back up and we'll go on to the TPS test. Okay, I believe I am across the 2 correct terminals here. Don't know if you can see it. I went above the top and the bottom and I got the reference 5 volts. So now I'm at the top and the middle and I'm showing a millivolt reading. Let's get out of millivolts here. Get the voltage. Voltage. 0.556 voltage, one of my favorite numbers, and I believe I have the high idle unplugged because the engine is cold and it was going to hold it open. Let's make sure I am backed all the way out. I tried to do that once, but let's make sure we're backed all the way out to where we're not touching. Okay, I have no. So now we're supposed to, it said come in 2.5 turns, so let's go until it barely touches. Okay, we're barely touching the plates there, so there's a 1/2 turn, there's 1 turn, there's 1.5, there's 2, and there's 2.5. What am I reading there? 0.773. I have a feeling that's going to be way too fast. I'm going to let the engine warm up now because I have to. So I'm going to put the high idle solenoid back on and just let it warm up. Okay, I am down off of high idle. I'm showing 805.805 volts. My wideband sensor is showing between 12.5 and 13. All the settings are in their centered position, but I'm at about 950 RPM, and that's too fast. So let's turn that down. I'm showing about 14 on the wideband, which is too lean, which is why it's missing. So let's see what he says to do. Now he wants the engine off. Okay, engine is off. Well, the key has to be on though, doesn't it? It does. Engine off, key on. 0.746 volts is too high. It should be 6.3. So let's move the O2 sensor down until I get 6.3. And now we're going to dial this till we get 0.63. Oh, wrong way. Okay. 6.2. .629. That's close enough for me. Probably going to change when I tighten it anyway. 632. It did. Okay, it's tight. Oh, look at that. Now let's see what, oh, make sure it moves smooth all the way. So here we go. Let's make sure it moves up and down smoothly all the way. And it should be 5 at full open throttle. Well, it's not. It's 3.8. And that is, that blade, I don't know if you can see it. That blade is wide open. Okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to cry about that. I don't know what I can do about that, and we'll let it shut, and we should go back somewhere in the vicinity of 6.3, 6.25. I can live with that. All right, it ain't even going to idle there. So let's try it again. It's not even going to idle there. See if I can get a reading on the sensor on the O2. Yeah, I'm reading in the low 20s there. So that's not going to work. Man, that is way too lean. Maybe that's got to do with the slightly low throttle, slightly low fuel pressure. I don't know, but that's not going to work. So now what? This is not making me very happy. Almost sorry I put the O2 sensor in it now. I think the time has come. I need to take that box out and have a look in it and see if I think I did anything that messed up the mid-range and idle settings, somehow tied them together. I can't think of anything else, so I'm going to do that next. So I went ahead and pulled the box apart, pulled the board out, and there are dip switches in it. You can see how I easily forgot about them. They're bright red, and they are set correctly. The setting is they should be rocked down on the toward the inside for engines over 360 cubic inches, and rocked down the way they are. I don't know if you can see them, but rock down like that for engines under 360 cubic inches, which my 258 absolutely is. And other than that, the board looks clean. All I did when I had it out was replace the 5 potentiometers. And one thing did happen, and that is, I don't know if you can see it, but right here, where is it? Right here, I broke a trace on the board. And I just took a small strand of copper wire and put it in its place. Now, all that does is that leads to the rear pin, and I believe that is the power pin of the potentiometer. I could be wrong, I have forgotten, and that's the high-speed one. That's full-on power. This is idle, and that's mid-range, and I don't think that would cause the problem I'm seeing. I'm thinking this board always worked this way, because I remember having trouble telling the difference between mid-range and idle adjustments. Maybe I'm fooling myself into thinking that, I don't know, but that's kind of how I remember it being. So unless I can find another one of these, I'm just going to go ahead and put it back together. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them all set in the center position, or at least idle, mid-range, and power. Acceleration and choke I don't care about that much, but leave idle, mid-range, and power set in their center positions, which is the way they are now. And then I'm going to adjust it so that I am getting my 12.5 to 13 air-fuel ratio on the gauge by using the throttle position sensor. And I think that's just what I'm going to have to go with until I decide what I want to, whether I want to try another one of these or what I want to do. Anyway, I'm going to throw it back together and put it back in. Okay, everything's put together and tightened back up. I did what I said I was going to do. I left all the controls on the box inside set to their very middle positions, except choke, which I turned all the way off. And I got the idle at 775, running smooth. I'm looking at 749.749 on the TPS at idle. You know, if it's any less than that, it's going to be too lean. And inside, we are looking at 12.4, 12.5, 12.3 at idle. Mid-range, we're dropping into the mid-11s. And after a couple seconds, it'll go back to about 12.5. And our throttle response, I am completely happy with that. Let's really punch it and see what happens. Yeah, I'm completely happy with that. I have no issues whatsoever. And besides, I can't get it better, so I guess I better be happy with it, right? So there you go. I am going to button this back up now, and I am going to call this done for now. If any of you know anything about these things, please give me your comments and suggestions below. But for now, I think it runs as good as it's ever. I think it runs as good as it ever did. I think this is how it always worked, at least for me. I've always been really happy with this thing. I've been running this for, gosh, I don't know, 25 years. And it has always worked well. I've had 2 fuel pumps fail, and I had a TPS fail once. Other than that, I've never done a darn thing to this thing, and it's always worked good. Starts up any temperature without a problem. Always idles good. You can be almost off camber enough to roll it over, and it still idles good. So I don't know. I'm almost, part of me is sorry now I put the wideband sensor in it, and part of me isn't. I know more than I knew before, but I don't like what I do know. But you know what? What do you do? That's life. We deal with what we've got, right? Anyway, I'll talk to you all later. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.